decades, there has been a noticeable divide between Atlanta's southern and northern regions. You know, you can just go on the north side of Atlanta and see all the buildings, the great things happening there, and you come on the south side and you see pretty much an airport, and that's it. However, that airport is a great revenue generator. But you see, we are totally underdeveloped on the south side. How do you account for that? How can we, with the world's busiest airport in our county, be so underdeveloped? That's the million-dollar question, I guess. But we're going to rectify that. However, the tides have shifted, and now there are visible signs of economic growth throughout South Metro, including new upscale single-family developments, a growing film industry to the tune of $52 billion throughout the state of Georgia, rapid growth in the healthcare sector, and a strong college presence. So I'm sure we're all eager to hear about what the future holds for the Southern Crescent.
Well, thank you, Chairman Turner, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Clayton State University, I'm delighted to welcome everyone. This is the favorite conference, and there's a lot going on in the South Side, so we are delighted to be a part of the program. As the primary comprehensive university in South Metro Atlanta, Clayton State University, under the leadership of President Tim Hines, is deeply engaged with the community and focused on making dreams come real every day. The College of Business is the largest AACSB accredited business school in South Metro Atlanta. And through this accreditation, we focus on three primary things in our daily interactions with students and the community: engagement, innovation, and impact. And we do that through 5 outreach centers, which I just wanted to briefly highlight here. We have the Center for Research on Economic Sustainability and Trends, CREST in short, which is led by Dr. Dadde, who's going to speak soon. We also have a Small Business Development Center, which works with a lot of incubators and small businesses in this area, South Side. We have a Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, a Center for Supply Chain Management, which focuses on logistics and supply chain, an area of focus for the College of Business, and a Center for Business and International Negotiation. In the last few years, through interacting with the community, these 5 centers and our own research have shown that there are 5 big policy questions that the South Side needs to address. I'll just raise them here very quickly, and then we will have the actual presentations from the experts. And I'm hoping, and I know that over the half day that we have here with the presentations coming up, we will be addressing a lot of these topics. So the 5 policy perspective questions are the 5 P's of economic development, as I would like to call for the South Side. The first question is, how do we promote a spirit of collaboration amongst South Side counties, cities, towns, and across intergovernmental entities to foster a regional identity for the South Side? We all are aware of the transformative role that economic clusters, industry clusters play in creating regional competitiveness, and we already are aware of some of these clusters here. There's the logistics cluster, there's the film and entertainment cluster that we talk about a lot. But are we focusing on these? Are we going to put all our efforts on these? Are we going to take it forward? That's question number 1. And I know that SMDO, under the tremendous leadership of Michael Hightower, as well as universities like Clayton State, can actually help in creating this collaboration and regional identity. The second question is, how do we pursue entrepreneurship and innovation with startups, incubators, small businesses, and companies within companies? We need to have large companies become more entrepreneurial, as we know, but also small businesses need to come up in more. And I would say that instead of just focusing on financial resources, infrastructural resources, and natural capital resources, we need to really highlight on innovation resources. That's what will take us forward. We need to see the leapfrogging model that a lot of countries from the developing world have used to come up several times, South Korea being an example, and we know it's possible. We can leapfrog and become the stellar player in the region. The third question is, how do we provide more case study-based alternative visions for economic development policymaking? Statistics alone doesn't say it all, and the numbers, while informative and important, would have to be interpreted right. I would suggest that we use more case study-based approach, talking about successes and failures in public-private partnership, and all the companies that have invested and seen tremendous results of investing in the South Side, and those that in fact have not, to talk about the opportunities and the challenges in this area. My fourth question is, how do we position the South Side in terms of perceptual mapping in a consumer mind, by unbranding the stigma as a lagging region in the Metro Atlanta area and rebranding it based on distinctive strengths and emerging clusters. So that's a process that we have to go through, but we have to first unbrand and then rebrand. And the fifth and last point that I would make is, how do we progress an inclusive and sustainable long-term agenda for economic development by migrating from the tactical initiatives that we more frequently see, more like a zero-sum game, to a strategic initiative, more like a positive-sum game. Instead of just focusing on new businesses, how can we foster existing businesses and bring them up? Instead of just using the government, how can we use public-private partnership, and so on. So I just wanted to throw out these 5 questions, the 5 Ps, and I know that during the sessions, we will have a much more detailed discussion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alvin. All right, our first forecast, the regional forecast, will be presented to us by Dr. Dante. Please help me welcome Dr. Dante.
Good morning, everyone. This is my 4th time attending this conference, the first time attending as a lecturer, so it's my karma day. If anyone, I went out of the room and banged the door too loudly, today is a day. You can avenge yourself. And I can tell you that I always sat among you and thought, oh, such a nice, lovely, fun people to listen to. I'm here and I have my butterflies, so be nice to me. Okay, so it's an honor and a privilege to talk here. I want to recognize Doug and Artie, who was my classmate in RLI. It's a fun time to be in the South Side. I believe in South Side, and I believe we have a lot of potential for growth, but I just want everyone to know potential never ever guarantees anything. My presentation is about us as an economic region. Then I talk about challenges of economic forecasting, and I cover a little bit about economic outlook for 2016. And we'll ask if new businesses continue to arrive in Southside. So we are a viable regional economy with many, many potentials. Our potentials are numerous. You probably know them more than and better than me. We also are constituted of major counties: Clayton, Douglas, Fayette, Henry, Rockdale. I'm sure South Fulton must be here as well, but since it's not a separate county, I did not have a data for it, so I don't include it. We have been successful attracting movie industry in the form of Pinewood Studios and other related businesses, car industry, Porsche. We have transportation airports. Airport is truly our main engine, our trust engine for growth. If I want to use an aviation metaphor, it's the biggest engine we have on our wings. And because of that, we all want to take it into account, but there are other engines as well, and for this airplane to take off, we need to think of other trusts. Our problem is poverty, in my point of view. As you can see from this data, we have low median income across most of the counties in the South Side. Students who use reduced lunch programs are more than 50% in most of them except for Fayette, 86% in Clayton. Our food stamp programs, unemployment, foreclosed notices, all are very formidable warnings. And this poverty, I get to you why it's going to be a problem. As you can see, the problem is that also poverty in suburban Atlanta has been growing faster than the rest of the United States. That's an issue. Poverty is not just a symptom. It is also something that can create barriers to growth and sustainable development. If I look at the poverty indexes across counties, Clayton is the worst shape, Fayette is the best shape, with Henry and Douglas in between, and Rockdale somewhere between the worst and the average bad. So as you can see, we have a problem. The problem is also the fact is that poverty costs taxpayers. When you have such an issue as poverty, you are increasing support programs welfare programs, and those cost money, take away dollars we need for economic growth and development. I am not blaming poverty, I'm explaining it. And I'm saying that why this gonna be costing us in development terms. If we want to achieve sustainable development in the South Side, we have to fight poverty. It is a disease, it's a cancer, and it's gonna stop us from reaching our development goal. Now, why this adds to challenges of economic forecasting in the South Side? Because it changes the economic impact. I'm an economist, I work with assumptions. When I build a model, I assume there is a causal relation. When I look at multiplier effect, I look at that multiplier effect through assumed causal relationship. Now, poverty has already changed that, altered that, without me even noticing it. So when I assume it's a 2.5 multiplier effect, in reality it might be 1.85, and will not create the economic impact we expect, will not push us as far as we want. Good thing is that, let me start with the data sources. We have really good data from Atlanta Regional Commission, survey studies we collect, and Bureau of Labor Statistics, and other similar organizations. Data is available for further studies and research. Also, I'm very happy that we have good benchmarks produced by the, excuse me, those butterflies are really bothering right now. It's Georgia State University Economic Forecasting Center, UGA forecast for the state of Georgia. Our, well, I'm gonna say Roger, develops a very good producer, production managers index from Kennesaw State. We have good benchmarks to compare the trends and to learn more about the interdynamics in the region. We should keep doing it until we have more results and more data collected. Now, but as I said, disparity and inequality widespread across our country, so the economic impact of our development projects might not follow our assumed multiplier effects. So don't be surprised, don't ask yourself why sometimes things that we expect them to bring back threefold just bring back 1.5. We need to fight this and we need to address it now. Oh, I can read them over here as well. Thank you. I remember that, Michael, next time. So, our outlook for 2016, I'm going to be very qualitative on it. Our work on infrastructure continues, and I believe the significance of movie industry grows for the simple reason that unlike airport, which is limited to one geographical location, with the employees and businesses scattered in a closed zone, movie industry can be scattered all over South Side, with both residents and employees and businesses. Some projects might be needed now, but we have to prioritize. I want to refer to Atlanta to Griffin Commuter Rail. As you may know, we have $20 million for studies in this project. With the construction time for post-2040. Now, I'm not going to reveal you my age, but in 2040, a lot of us in this room are looking at retirement. And that means, yes, you think I'm going to talk about my age? Okay, so we're gonna have further studies in that regard, but public transportation has been a huge economic player. We have it coming back to Clayton County. It's a good time to collect data and study the economic impact MARTA has had on Clayton County. As you may know, Clayton County lost a lot of tax revenues because of reduced retail activities and residential demand. This is an important part for me to point out because limited resources always mean prioritization, and we have to prioritize. We have good ongoing projects. I just talked to Roger about the traffic we have in Henry County coming all the way north. As you can know, I'm really happy I'm coming from north to south. It doesn't mean I like north, I just didn't like the traffic from south to north in the morning. So we have this project that we're gonna spend $102 million, $170,000 as well with change, on it to expand Tara Boulevard between I-75 and Battle Creek. This is one of those projects that is infrastructure oriented and separate commuting and commercial traffic, making it more accessible for people to commute to Atlanta and more accessible for people who want to do business in the area. Alone in Clayton County, we have $158 million worth of infrastructure projects. This is a good number, don't you think so? But where is the impact? Why we don't see, like what Jeff said, why don't we see the developed vision? We just say developing vision. The fact is that these projects right now impact regional Atlanta region better than or more than Clayton County, or counties they are being implemented in. And that means in the long run they're gonna spill over at the county level, making it better for all of us. We need, if we wanna rush things, if we want to see results now, we need to also think about bringing more businesses. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is also housing. I know based on the data I just showed you, we have a good chunk of foreclosed notice in the area, and I have less than 5 minutes to talk. And thank you for noticing that. My students do it by closing their laptops. You know, whenever I have 5 minutes at the end of the class, I see the laptops coming down. I'm like, okay, 5 minutes call. So, the Atlanta's housing market is cooling down in price. This might not be bad for Atlanta, but it might be really bad for us because we have a soft market already. So any slowdown in Atlanta region means we're gonna have a drop of demand more drastically than the rest of Atlanta, and our housing market might slow down at a faster pace than the rest of the Atlanta. Now, will new businesses arrive? I think our potentials do not guarantee sustainable development, they promise them. Sustainable development comes as a result of unified vision and coordination across the region. We have a good mix of transportation, entertainment, distribution, and farming. New businesses look for inexpensive real estate, access to Atlanta downtown, access to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, but their employees seek affordable housing. It's our big plus. Quality public education, I apologize, this is not necessarily a big plus for us. I put it somehow a strong negative. And then quality of life, which is somehow positive, but varies a lot across the South Side. Our advantages: South Side is a prime location for transportation, movie production, warehousing, and distribution. More likely, we see more inquiries from these industries, especially as the Port of Savannah is being developed. Our disadvantages is that we are not going to be very successful at attracting high-tech. High-tech is for 6% employment in Atlanta, not a large portion, but with high-tech comes a huge impact. A high-tech company usually has 3.5 to 5 times more impact than in any average business. That means we are not, and the impact is also in more high-paid jobs. If Google comes here, for example, I bet we're gonna get a first-class hospital because those people don't want to go just to see a general practitioner. Conclusions, and I think I'm on time. I'm proud of myself. I rushed through this last month. I'm hopeful. We see more infrastructure development. We see more low to middle income level jobs being created in our area. And movie industry more and more is acting as a catalyst. And I think I love airport. My field is aviation as an economist, and I think airport has provided the first push, but the push that's going to spill over all over our region will come from movie industry. I am also mindful of the lack of economic vision that's going to impose a recoverable cost. The thing about being developing, and I am from a developing country, is that resources are going to be very, very limited. As a result, we have to have a coordinated prioritization process in order to make sure they bring the most productivity. We cannot attract companies that are high-tech or focusing on high-tech right now. That might be something that we can address in the next 3 to 5 years by creating more infrastructure, improving our public education, and building on the potential and advantages offered by movie industry and airport. Am I on my time, or I'm gonna see that 0 minute now? I think I'm on time. Good. Thank you so much for your patience, and it was my first time. If I come back, I promise I'll do a better job. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. DePay, for that presentation. As you can see, South region has some work to do. But also, as you can see, there are a number of projects that are online that will have a positive impact on the southern region as a whole. And as we continue to bring on more and more of these major projects, such as the Aerotropolis, which will impact around the airport area, it will make a major difference. So thank you again for that presentation. And at this time, I'm going to call Dr. Tutterow to present to us the statewide national economic forecast. Mr. Tutterow.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Turner, for the lovely introduction, and to my dear friend Michael Hightower, who continues to be the great advocate for economic development here on the South Side, and certainly to Avi and Ali. Thank y'all so much for sharing the stage with me. Thank you, or allow me to share it with you, I should say. And thank you for everything you're doing here in the Southern Crescent. I'm amazed by the progress of Clayton State's Business School. It is truly a mecca for economic growth on this side. But mostly, thank you for making my name the easiest to pronounce on the panel today, which takes some doing when you're in Tutterow. But what I thought we'd do for a couple minutes is let's think about the broader economy a little bit. I think you're going to see that what we say kind of integrates in with Ali's well thought out comments about development here on the South Side, the Southern Crescent. Here's the big question. When I go out and speak to business groups today, frequently I'm asked, here we are, by the book, now 6.5 years into this economic recovery. They say, does it mean we're due for a recession? Does the fact that we're now approaching the 7th birthday for this economic expansion mean that it's time to correct downward? What I say is this. It is true historically that in the post-World War II experience, your average expansion has been about 58 months. So if we think that we're in the 79th month of this economic expansion now, it does seem to be getting a little bit long in the tooth. The problem is this. I do not believe that economic expansions die of old age. I think they die of bad policy. They die of asset bubbles. They die of inventory buildups. They die of exogenous shocks like energy crises and wars around the globe. So when we look at this economic expansion that is now approaching the 7th birthday, we do not see any of those magnitudes sufficient to cause the economy in the near term to move into recession. So while it is true that we remain concerned that the pace of economic growth, which let's be candid, has been a little bit timid at the national level, will continue to be underperforming, we do not believe that the economy goes into recession in 2016. Now let's back up that last comment for a moment. We said a little bit timid in terms of growth. The source of frustration for many sectors and many households around the nation is that this economic recovery has not looked like most recoveries of the post-World War II era. Now it may be because of the magnitude of financial dislocations we had early in the expansion. But the point is this. If I go back and look at the last 4 recessions, if I look at the recession after 1981-82, the so-called Reagan recession, which at that time was the deepest in 60 years, when we look at that, we realize that in the first 5 years after that recession ended, economic growth averaged 4.7%. After the 1991 recession, we came out, we had an expansion that averaged about 3.1%. After the 2001 recession, around 2.8%. But the most recent recession, the one that ended in June of 2009, was followed by a period of economic growth that was relatively weak by historical standards, about 2.1%. So part of the reason that we are only feeling like we're getting back to normal now, nationwide, and quite candidly even somewhat here in the region, is because not only the depth of that recession, but the timidity to recovery. Now, I argued a minute ago that we will not have recession in 2016. I will tell you that I believe the risk of the contraction is higher today than it was this time last year. But our point estimate of 2% GDP growth for 2016 is indicating our belief that the most likely path for the economy is continued expansion. But let's step all the way back for a couple of minutes to when we were together this time last year. This time last year, first quarter 2014, GDP data came out and it showed a relatively timid 0.6% growth rate in the first quarter. Now friends, one quarter does not make a trend. But let's be candid about last year's first quarter. There were 4 factors, 2 of which are transitory and 2 which are more permanent, that caused economic growth to be weak early last year. And I want to hit on them, not because we're talking about the past, but because 2 of those are still very relevant today. First off, number 1, the weather. You always talk about the weather in the first quarter, and we here in Georgia saw back in 2014 how the weather can sideline your economy. Last year, the inclement weather was in the northeastern part. It shut down retail sales in the whole I-95 corridor from New York going up into Maine. And it showed up in the worst performance for consumer spending in the last 6 quarters. Second driver, the disruption of the disruption with the port of Long Beach. The labor dispute out there that shut down the flow of product coming in on the West Coast. My friends, you would go see the freighters lined up in the bay there in Long Beach, looking like planes on the tarmac at Hartsville on a Monday morning. Obviously, that slowed down, clogged the supply chain channel, and impacted growth early in the year. Both those issues are behind us. But the other 2 factors that impacted economic growth early last year are the 2 major sources of concern today. One of them is the fact that as the manufacturing sector has responded and recovered strong early in this recovery, in recent months it has gotten weaker. What you're looking at is the Institute of Supply Management's Monthly Purchasing Managers Index, which gives us a real-time read on how the goods-producing side of the economy is performing. Despite the fact that it was so robust early in this recovery, despite the fact that manufacturing was up there with healthcare as one of the better sectors to the economy early in the recovery, in the last 6 months, manufacturing has slowed. And in the last 4 months, we actually show manufacturing moving sideways at best. Now, why is that the case? Why is manufacturing bucking a recent trend toward reshoring and improving our industrial side of our economy here in the U.S.? Very simple reason. As goes the U.S. dollar, goes our trade picture. And when the U.S. dollar has rallied as much against major trading partners as it has over the last 2 years, that strong dollar is great if you happen to be going to Paris or Milan for the holidays, for the spring trip. Take your significant other. It's great if you're sourcing raw materials from abroad, but it is hammering us on exports. As that dollar has firmed, the ability of American companies to produce products to ship abroad or to compete with foreign-produced products domestically has been impaired. And so it's not surprising that trade, which had been a contributor to growth early in the recovery, has now become an albatross against which we lean. Fourth point, this is also still with us, is this. We have to acknowledge that while consumer confidence has rallied, as those oil prices came down in 2014 and 15, it has caused the middle part of our country to go from expansion to contraction. Now, friends, it helps us here in Georgia. In metropolitan Atlanta, we do better as those gas prices come down. When I look at the national consumer sentiment numbers, we are back in a range that we would consider normal. And I will tell you that the metropolitan Atlanta numbers are about roughly in line with what the national numbers are. But the point I want to make on that is this. When we look at those gas prices coming down, we in Georgia celebrate that fact. But we have to understand that part of the problem with talking about a national economy and national growth and national recessions is that not every part of our country goes up and down together. And I'm going to argue in a moment, when we look at performance locally versus performance in other states of the Union, that the correction in the energy prices has shaved off growth at the national level simply because it took previously high-flying parts of the country and turned them into moving sideways at best. Now, to back all this up and to firm up our 2% GDP growth numbers, I always tell you, you need to get a benchmark. You need to have a reality check that is not swayed by political persuasion, that is not influenced by methodological considerations. And the one that I use is the Conference Board's Leading Economic Index. This aggregates 10 data series that go up before expansions, down before recessions. This is an index that has not failed to go negative before every recession of the post-World War II era. Where is it today? Well, it's up about 0.8%, over the trailing 6 months? Not robust, but not giving us a recession signal either. So while we will be frustrated at the pace of growth nationally and even here somewhat in the Southeast, the idea of a full-blown recession in the near term is overstated. Now against that, let's talk about payrolls for a moment. We celebrate the fact that last month we continued to expand our payrolls. I know the headline number, 151,000, wasn't what the consensus outlook was in the market. But don't let 1 month fool you. Over the trailing 12 months, we're adding about 215,000 jobs per month to non-farm payrolls nationwide. Where's the growth coming? Well, almost every sector of the economy lost jobs during the Great Recession. And almost every sector of the economy, except for government, has added them back so far in this recovery. Who have been the biggest contributors to growth? Wow, I'm in a room full of development-oriented folks. They know the fact that when I look at construction and I see it up over 20% so far in this recovery, we are seeing employment in that construction sector come back, and that's important, particularly important in Metro Atlanta, where both commercial and residential real estate have always been disproportionately influential sectors. We also see professional and business services, education and healthcare, leisure and hospitality, and actually retail, wholesale trade, and logistics, an area in which this region is making a nice play to be a home. All the sectors of the economy adding back to our growth. But let's talk about Georgia for a moment in a national context. If I look at all the jobs that we dropped during the Great Recession, and let's be honest, we lost more than the national average here in Georgia and here in Metro Atlanta because of our exposure to residential real estate and the spillover effect it had on financial institutions. But when we look at all those jobs we dropped and all those that we came back, Georgia went from being one of the 10 states that lost the most jobs to we're now so far in this recovery, and over the last 2 years, we're among the 12 fastest growing states. And we've actually had a window where we're in the top 6. So we are back creating jobs again. So we take the jobs we lost, we take the jobs we add back, and we're still in the top, well, let's call it a third, if you look at employment versus 2007. But here's the key. Look over on the far left-hand side of this chart. And I know your eyes probably aren't good enough to read them either. Mine certainly aren't. But if you look at the states that have done the best versus 2007, the last month before the Great Recession started, they are North Dakota, Texas, Alaska, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Louisiana. What do they have in common? It's all about energy. If you're an energy extracting, refining, distributing part of the country, you did better in the Great Recession and you helped us on the way out. What does it look like today? Wow. Look over the last 12 months, who's actually down? North Dakota, West Virginia, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Louisiana. These are the places now that were high flyers early in the recovery that are now actually seeing the economy contract as those crude oil prices come down. So my point is this. When we talk about economic growth at the national level continuing to be somewhat sluggish, understand that we can have both above par growth in metropolitan Atlanta and have national numbers that are still a little bit less than we would like, simply because the middle part of our country is feeling the effects of that drop in crude oil prices. Now I'm going to comment real quickly, if I can, on job growth in metropolitan Atlanta. The truth is we were up 91,000 jobs over the trailing 12 months statewide. 77,000 of those are in Metro Atlanta. Now understand 77,000 jobs added today is not quite what it was in 1990. We are now a 2.6 million worker labor market in metropolitan Atlanta. But the point is we expect that payrolls will go up 68 to 70,000 probably in 2016, which on a proportionate basis will continue to be faster job creation than what we are having nationwide. Quick comment or two. I'm going to kind of cut it off here so we can take questions. I do want to comment for a couple of minutes on the Fed. One comment on the Fed, one comment on housing. The Federal Reserve raised short-term rates on August 16th for the first time in about 9 years. My friends, it's not a bad thing, and here's why. Don't let the talking heads on TV convince you that this is a tightening in monetary policy. We have had short-term rates at 0 since December of 2008. When you've been driving your car for 7 years with the accelerator through the floorboard, easing off the accelerator a little bit is not the same thing as hitting the brake. Calling this a tightening in monetary policy is dishonest, in my opinion. We're going from an insanely accommodative monetary policy to just a very accommodative monetary policy. The consensus outlook is for 4 rate hikes from the Fed this year. I think you'd be lucky if you get 2. Keep in mind they're not going to raise the rates during the presidential election. So you're guaranteed on both the short end and the long end of the yield curve that borrowing costs will not be problematic in the real estate, construction, and development sector of our economy. Finally, commenting real quickly, we do see construction spending coming back and celebrate the fact that last year was the first year of this recovery in which both public sector and private sector construction spending were up, and probably up more than 10%. That's good news. We recognize the fact that we're seeing broad-based expansions in non-residential construction, manufacturing, industrial-oriented space being built at a faster clip in the last 12 months than we've probably seen in a decade. We recognize that hotels are coming back. Great examples of what's going on here in the South Side. 4 years in a row now, more than 20% increase in lodging construction. But the other thing that we have to keep an eye on is the residential market. Here's the thing. Keep in mind that anytime anything drops by 80%, it's got to go up 400% to get back to even. And I always remind folks of that. Because when you see these 10 and 12% increases in housing starts and new home sales, understand that the percentage is misleading because it comes off such a low base. Yes, the housing market is coming back. When you go from 2.1 million units all the way down to about 550,000, that's your 80% drop. When you come back up to where we are now at about 1.1, you're still not back yet to what we would consider normal. But the other cautionary note is this. The multifamily market, not in Atlanta, but nationwide, is getting a little bit frothy. So I'm not concerned about the number of units of multifamily housing in Metro Atlanta nationwide this time next year. You're going to hear about a couple markets that overshot a little bit. They overshot in terms of the kind of product they produce, the price point they built it for, and the absolute volume of product. Finally, the home prices are coming back up. We can address that some during the Q&A. I want to leave you with one last point. Driving over this morning, I heard, y'all might not know this. Did y'all know there's a presidential election this year? Anybody presidential election? Let me be clear, no one on the stage is a candidate for the nomination, okay? That we know. Who's going to win? Well, here's how I tell people to do. Ignore the talking heads, ignore the pollsters. The way you handicap a race is you go to the folks who put their money where their mouth is. And so where I always send folks is to the University of Iowa's electronic market, where you buy a contingent contract on your candidate to win the election. Now, I gave this talk a couple months back in Chicago, and I had to clarify for them. This is different than buying the candidate directly, which is a time-honored tradition in Cook County. What does the Iowa market say for you right now? Well, here it is. In the presidential market, the winner take all, 82% chance the Democrats retain the White House. Now, I'm showing my bias. I'm a lifelong Republican, just so everybody knows. But the numbers are what the numbers are. The Electoral College favors Democrats because, once March 1st comes and goes, we don't count anymore. Once March 1st comes and goes, the primaries are over. Georgia's not going to get a lot of money coming into it. It's going to see money going out because we're a red state. Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Utah, Vermont, California, Massachusetts, these states don't matter. 6 or 7 states, and you know who they are, will pick the next president of the United States. On the congressional side, it is about a coin flip now on which way that Senate goes, and quite candidly, how we play the politics on the replacement nomination for Justice Scalia will end up playing an important role in determining who controls the Senate in 2017 and going forward. Sorry, run over a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tutterow. And you ran over more than just a little bit. He kept looking at the timekeeper. Keep on talking. But it was very informative. Matter of fact, let's give all our doctors. Unfortunately, we do not have time for a Q&A, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for being here today and listening to this panelist talk about the economics and the challenges along the south side we have here in the Southern Crescent. Change is coming. Change only comes, though, when we put the hard work in. So thank you for being here, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Turner, Chairman of Clayton County, and I'm here today with Michael Hightower for his annual South Metro Development Outlook Conference. This conference brings awareness to the great things that are happening here on the south side of Atlanta, in Clayton County in particular. Clayton County is a great county for growth. Clayton County is a great county to bring a business, to raise a family, and just to have a good time in general.